So here we are back at it again. Ted and I just spending good time talking about AEC tech and life and some other weird stuff. But just really just having a good time with some of the people who's able to join or who might be watching and recording as well. Hopefully you guys are receiving okay tonight. If you find any sort of problem, just let us know down in the chat. We'll try and address it. But other than that, we got a topic of VR is what we decided to speak about today. Other than a couple of VR topics that I want to go over, we'll just kind of run by and see what comes up. But if you also have any questions, feel free to leave it down in the comments if you're watching this on recording or in the chat if you are watching this live. So good to have you again, Ted. As always, it's a pleasure. So, was there something that you wanted to add today?
Always a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. Well, why don't we kind of kick it off with just VR? Do you think VR is useful for AEC?
I mean, it's not useful for AEC. I think it's I have mixed feelings about VR. I have two headsets behind me, both of which that I bought, personally to play with. And I've enjoyed the process of learning about VR, learning about the process of developing for VR. But it still feels a little kludgy within the AEC market, with a few exceptions. Um, it's got a ton of value for designers. Like being able to use VR to understand a space is hugely beneficial. However, the ability to run that smoothly is limited. And I think a lot of people miss on that. And the fact that right now the most accessible option, which is the VR headset right here, the Quest 2, price wise, it's very inexpensive. Usability, it's very easy, but it's very closed to any kind of um, use outside of just your own personal desktop. I have trouble right now with the headset, using the headset with clients because it's limited to what's on my desktop. I can't share scenes. I can't. Um, there's a lot of limitations right now, and I think that'll be, ironed out over the course of the future. But I still think it's all very much in its infancy. And until we see more widespread adoption within the mass market, it's going to be a difficult sell even in the AEC community.
Yeah, and I agree with a lot of portion there. That's what you have said. I'm just gonna dial in a little further in a couple of things that you've said there. So, going back to the just pure benefit of VR is the way I put it is when you look at the space in 2D, then you just see sort of the color and picture and composition. But then once you introduce sort of emotion to it, when it's a walkthrough or any sort of
Hmm.
video or flyby, once you start to add a bit motion so that you are just kind of moving through the space, then you start to understand the scale in a way that the further things are further and it's moving much slower than the things that are closer to you. So you start to feel the space than just a pretty composition and kind of put together picture. You start to realize in a video with the emotion and animation, you start to understand the space in a slightly more detailed way. You have better spatial awareness. But
Oh
then
yeah.
when you jump into VR, it's another dimension because it is not just the scale of things. You start to understand this because It's stereoscopic, so you can actually feel like a real object. So you're not trying to perceive it in a different way. You're just literally seeing it, and you don't have to really digest the information. You don't have to process the information. You just literally see and be there. And that's a huge benefit in terms of understanding the space. However, as you said, there are other howevers and uh, things that you have to overcome, which is one, technology. Two, I think there are some limitations. I think it's all bound because of the technology, but also the fact that you can't just jump in all the time. You can't really model inside of VR. That's another thing. But there are some solutions out there, and
Yeah.
we'll talk about that as we get further along. But I'm just trying to fill in a couple of things that you said there. So we're gonna talk about the headset. We're gonna talk about the software. We're gonna talk about what is to come, what to expect, how to overcome a all of these things. And I do want to touch on sort of the multi-people usage thing. The I kind of so a lot of people have asked me, and a lot asked the community, is there a way to have like a VR conference so that you're looking at the space together? And there are solutions there, and I wouldn't say one is better than the other. There are some good
Yep.
solutions that I have experience with, but I have to tell you, in this day and age, Zoom, Skype, Google, everyone has some problem. Hey, my mic
Hmm.
isn't working, my camera isn't working, my
It's
internet's
exponentially
slow.
more difficult with
Yeah,
VR.
if you can't make your voice chat work, how you gonna make your webcam, FaceTime or whatever may be working?
Oh, this
Let
is cool.
alone how are you gonna make VR conference or VR chat working? So that's another thing.
So, View Mosby?
Keep at it. We'll
I'm gonna
just
have a
fail.
rough time with that one.
Yeah,
So he posted
Archeo.
Archeo.
Yeah,
I
Archeo.
haven't seen this before. This is pretty cool.
I that was one of the software that I did want to mention.
It's a little
Johan,
cutesy.
yeah, Johan who developed it. We actually met back in London, so they had a kind of showcase in London, VR conference. Hi, Victor, nice to meet you. He just chatted. Um, uh, so we're gonna have a little bit of easier time he's saying his name. So
Uh,
Victor
Victor,
mentioned
much easier.
Archeo. Archeo used to be in beta for a very long time, about 3 years, if I'm not mistaken. It might have been alpha at the very beginning, but
Hmm.
it just released as like a regular version. I want to say like a month ago. And it is a software that I really do want to showcase on my channel because it does have a very good potential, and I think it poses, as I said, you can't really design in VR. That statement that I just said like 2 minutes ago, that actually changes with Archeo. Archeo is very much like, think about, I hope I'm putting it in a correct way, but it is basically SketchUp in VR. So in a very
Ah,
basic, intuitive way.
virtual Legos.
Oh, yeah, but it's a very intuitive, I feel. It literally is push and pull, and you can design that way. So massing is easy. That's what SketchUp really started as.
Hmm.
Massing is a quick sketch on VR is easy with Archeo. So Archeo is kind of cool. I definitely would like you to try out if you haven't already.
I'm downloading it as we speak. I'm
Okay.
gonna give this a try. This looks fun.
Yeah, so in terms of the multi-user, I do want to say Insight VR is one of them. Prospect, or I believe they changed to Wild, haven't they? So um, Iris VR, which is the company name for Prospect, who does the multi-user VR experience. Their aim is more of coordination and clash detection and visual checking of the model, more so than just purely experiencing your model. So it is not as, I would say, streamlined as Enscape in terms of VR experience, and the visual fidelity isn't as high, but their aim is to put together architecture model, MEP model, and all the things together, and
Hmm.
then actually walk in to them with various stakeholders and walk through that to either comment or feedback and make sure things are working correctly. Those things are what they are aiming for, and they have been quite successful, and they have been bought by, I want to say bought by Wild, who are the another VR player, and that was quite recent move as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Iris VR has pivoted a few different times. I like where they're at right now. While it's not as pretty as other options, I think it fills a niche for that sort of collaborative, interactive type of review. Um, and so I did a presentation about a year and a half, 2 years ago now, to I can't remember the name of the conference, but it was a group of building management companies, literally companies that coordinate the management of buildings after they're built. Um,
Building
yeah,
operations.
building operations management.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Prism, that's the name of the conference. It was the Prism conference, and don't ask me what Prism stands for because I don't remember, but it has something to do with building management, management of properties. Um, and one of the things that we talked about is virtualizing building management and how VR could potentially. It was kind of a stretch. I'll be completely honest. We were stretching with this presentation, but they asked us, what are the ways that you could combine VR with our current, you know, business model of building management, and we did the best we could. But it was really interesting seeing people who are within the AEC industry. They're under the AEC umbrella, but they are also completely unaware of the VR space, and their minds were all blown because they're looking at this going, "Oh, this is really valuable. These approaches to building review are really important." And one of the presenters, or one of the presentees, one of the audience members, came up to me afterwards and asked some really insightful questions about, well, what are the opportunities for pre uh, building walkthroughs? So let's say you've got a team outside of your building not available to come on site. How do you get them to walk through the space? Well, there's a lot of different ways to do that with like Matterport and things like that. But like the concepts that they started thinking about is how to use VR and augmented reality to manage buildings at a distance, through uh, RFID tagging and review management and safety reviews and things of that nature. It was a very interesting conversation that evolved from something that I didn't expect to be of value to them whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think there's an opportunity for VR in a lot of spaces that don't necessarily think that VR is valuable yet. Um, and that comes back to it's just not regularly accepted as a thing that people do.
Right.
My wife still thinks I'm a fool when I get into my VR headset and dance around the living room doing whatever I'm doing in the VR
Well, if
headset.
you're dancing around, you're probably not really, really doing what you're supposed to do. You
No, I'm modeling in. I use Quill, and I model in that, and she makes fun of me because I'm dancing around the living room, swinging my arms all over.
Well,
Like I'm
it.
building things.
Usually, I'm just playing a game, but then I also don't really whip it out all that often because of children who are running around blindly, and I don't wanna be blind inside of them either. So,
Yeah, my poor dog learned the hard way not to get next to me while I'm in the headset.
well, yeah. So, let's talk about just headset. How about that?
Yeah,
Since you got
yeah.
it, you got two of them out there. There are a few headsets that I have covered in my channel, going back to HTC Vive,
Mm-hmm.
to I believe I want to say it was a Dell Vision, which was a Windows mixed reality
I
headset.
remember that. I
And
remember that.
then I also showcase HP mixed reality headset. That was the one that I actually owned and purchased with my own money for quite a bit, and I've always recommended that as the best headset for AEC. And then soon after, Oculus Quest came out, which is this one, and then I just completely just converted to this one and sold off my HP one. And actually, HP has released several more headsets that are supposedly better than the previous one, but I didn't like them as much. And
Hmm.
I'll do you want me to kind of go over why I kind of took that step?
I mean, yeah, I'm kind of interested to hear a little bit more about what the HP update kind of steered you away from it because I've got my own opinions about some of the other headsets, but
So, I mean, I have to kind of mention about the physical build of this. So, I'm not 100% married to Oculus, the original Oculus design. And I kind of prefer Oculus Quest 2 in some manner, but I'll get into that. But my first HTC Vive, which was basically my company's headset, so I never owned HTC Vive, but the whole setup was really clunky in terms of setting up your sensors. And I've had really high stake meetings, and now I'm actually going in as an architectural designer, architectural presentation to
hmm
a high stakeholder presentation, kind of high profile. So you go into this large meeting room hauling over a giant laptop and a giant bag full of tripods and sensors. And this is in London, so you got no AC in the subway, in a pack full in tube, what they call, and underground. And then you arrive at the office and you're just drenched in sweat. And
hmm
I'm going around the presentation room 10 minutes before. It takes ton of troubleshooting and setting up process, calibrating, going around. So once I hand over this headset, I've got to make sure everyone is clear off from the deck so that nobody is in the way of these sensors. The sensor tracking outside in tracking is limited because if there's any other object that is in the way, it loses tracking. And for that time, HTC Vive basically will give you a black or gray screen if there's something in your way and if it is not sensing something that it's supposed to do. So there's a bunch of wires that are hanging about because the sensor need to be powered and then connected, as well as there's a bundle of wire that are going from the headset to the little station and then station to the laptop. So there's a lot of wires that are in the area where it is just set up like 10 minutes ago by a very sweaty guy.
yeah, yeah.
And I can't really imagine, you're this high-end client who's investing millions of money, millions of pounds in that case, and this young dude shows up sweaty and he's handing you over a headset. Do you really want to wear it? Is one question that
Yeah.
I have a problem with. And
So
go ahead.
I've been through the exact same thing. What we started to do is we pretty much said if you want the VR demo, you have to come to the office, and we had a dedicated room for it because I mean you're talking about in the earlier days of VR, even with the Oculus, there's no inside out tracking. It just wasn't a thing that was available yet. So you had lighthouses for the Oculus and you had lighthouses for the Quest, and we were testing both at the time. And the Quest had so much, like, it was such a better quality. And the trackers were so much more effective. The problem was it was just that much more stuff that you had to manage. Um, Oculus, you set up two on the wall and one behind so that it wouldn't, so you would have three trackers, and you would just go, and it was a little bit less to deal with. But we finally just set up both of them in a room and said, if you want to use these, you have to come here because we did it once and then we were just like, this is just silly, we're not doing this again. The client wasn't happy, we weren't happy, it was kludgy, it didn't always work, it wasn't reliable. So unless we had a full day on site with a client, we weren't about to bring it with us. So it was difficult, but it was also, I think even now it's still almost in beta. Like, it's just not, even though these are publicly available and these things are tools that are being um, sold as finished products, they're really kind of not. If you go back and look at the iPhone 1, I don't know what they call it, but the first iPhone, and you think about what was involved in developing that and what you got for it, it was a very expensive iPod with a screen.
So are you saying that the first generation headset HTC Vive and also Oculus Rift, I want to say, these were known to be better. I guess maybe less so on HTC Vive, but Oculus Rift, there were like the developers package where
Yeah, the
it was still in
the
beta very
DX1 or
much.
something. Yeah, that was
Yeah.
very much in beta, but even the released product was, it still felt very much in beta. And all I'm saying is we are still learning how to use these things, and until like truly augmented reality comes into play, it's just going to be kind of a back and forth of what works, what doesn't, and it's almost a novelty still.
Yeah,
Um,
I want to go back to my days where I was testing out the HTC Vive. So I concluded that this is probably not the thing that you want. It's just too clunky and too much of a setup,
it was kind of
and
heavy too.
it was very heavy. I had like two carry-on luggages that I was carrying in the tube. It wasn't fun. And and then when mixed reality headset came out, it was revolutionary because all you needed, instead of like two powers and like
Yep.
three different USB that you need to connect to your laptop's already running out of ports at this point because you've got to connect to a screen presentation screen and then the headset. You're running out of very quickly. Whereas mixed reality headset, and the first one I had on my hand was the Dell Vision, and it's a white owl looking. It was very close to what Quest 2 was. It's just a
Yeah,
slimmer version.
I
And
remember
I
that.
liked it. And I liked it because it only required two connection, USB
Hmm.
and HDMI port, and it just worked. Yeah, the fidelity wasn't as high, but it was inside out tracking, which means that I don't need to set up any sensors. I can still walk around. It's still away from the wireless days. Yeah, it's just too many wires. Which one is that?
So this is the Oculus Rift,
Okay.
the first one that came out. Um, I actually still really like this headset, despite all these extra wires that are everywhere right now, because I pulled it out wrong. But the headset strap is really comfortable. The shape of the headset is really kind of nice, and the weight is really kind of nice
It's
because you're
lighter,
not dealing with batteries and everything else inside
significant
of it.
lighter.
And the options to add in headphones that are these little earbuds was really nice too. This is a wonderful headset. I really love this thing. And I still use it at home a lot of the time. Not so much anymore since I've now been kicked out of the basement for my daughter's playroom. But,
None of your
you know,
playroom anymore, huh?
no, I don't have a playroom anymore.
Yep.
I really need a garage. But I mean, this thing is so much more elegant and it's so much simpler to deal with. I don't love the headset
The
strap
strap.
as
So
much.
I actually go back to when mixed reality headset came out. They were just kind of like a hard hat where you have a little dial back of your head, and then you dial,
Hmm.
turn it, and then it tightens around your head. Whilst it's not really all that comfortable for long term use, but it is very effective in a way, quickly adjusting to different sizes of head. My head is massive, so I need to open up all the way. But
Yep.
when I'm ready to put it on somebody else, then I've got to tighten it.
Yep.
And
And I've got a tiny little pinhead, so
so going from me to you, it's gonna take a long
yeah.
time if it is one of these straps where it is all velcroed, and these is very clunky. When you got everything set up, you gotta look into it, set it up
Hmm.
for them, and position the self in correct position and get all ready, and then adjust it. Hopefully you haven't sweat at that point so that your headset isn't wet at that point.
Yep.
And then you have to hand it over, and that is a lot more adjustments and making sure three different points versus just a one single knob that you just tighten from the back. Even
Yeah.
if the sort of eye alignment is not completely correct, if you're getting it 90% of the time and for 5 minute use, I'm fine with that because you're looking at quick success of many different people who's willing to jump into the space
Yep.
than people who's willing to do this for 30 minutes and
I
sweating
will
out.
say, speaking of eye alignment, I do like the older Rift eye alignment tool because it was on the bottom side of the headset. That was so much more convenient than having the click in and out. Yeah, the new Quest doesn't have that.
Yeah, so the
So,
original has one. So that's the
yeah, so
thing.
there's nothing here. You manually have to get in here and click it in or out. And that's actually really difficult to do prior to putting it on. So you have to put it on, take it off, adjust, put it on. That's not right. Take it off, adjust. It's really problematic when you're trying to get a bunch of people in and out of it.
And
Um,
HTC Vive didn't have that problem either. It actually had the physical
hmm.
the knob or slider. So, but for me, what I found out is my eye distance is actually quite average. So like I can pretty much park it anywhere and not really
And you're
be.
comfortable.
I'm usually comfortable, and even these odd ones that you can't really adjust. If I just put it on the average, it seems to be I'm right sweet spot on the average. It's just that my head is giant. So
Yeah.
I just need to make sure all those straps are as loose as possible. Is the only thing that I need to be aware of. But coming from the Dell Vision, saw I did not like Dell Vision as much because it looked like what I described as owl, like a white owl, because it's got two giant black sensors that are looking out, and it was white. So it looked kind of silly when you're wearing it. And also, I couldn't really go away from
Hmm.
Lenovo's mixed reality headset. It just looked like a RoboCop. Um, that was the design that they had, and mixed reality does have a little bit of RoboCop vibe, but the HP mixed reality headset seemed it was cheaper, and also it wasn't as expensive as Samsung's Odyssey mixed reality headset, but also had very cheap, but also gave they were all across the same fidelity in terms of graphic fidelity. But I really
Yeah.
like their headset design where you can actually the inside of the headset was all velcroed, so you can actually replace it and also wash it if you want to, and then also just a single knob adjustment to adjust to your head. So I really liked. And then when they first came out with the revision to the HP mixed reality headset, I think it was called Reverb,
Hmm.
and they came out with a very similar head strap design with slightly better fidelity inside of the headset. So still very much mixed reality environment. And mixed reality, for those of you who are not aware, it is Microsoft Windows base, and the platform is a little bit clunky because of that Microsoft kind of starting it and not really developing it further, and not being as successful. So going through that platform in order to get to either a Steam for different type of software that you're wanting to use, it was very clunky.
Hmm.
And mixed reality headsets had that just limitation because it's a Windows mixed reality headset,
Yeah.
and Reverb was still very much in that, and the strap completely changed, and I did not like the resolution change is good, but also it is hard to push all of that resolution too. So not just increasing the resolution doesn't really solve the problem because the laptop that you have to carry around still is very much
Yeah, you
big.
almost have to bring a big old desktop with you, um, or a very small big desktop.
Yeah. Yep. I've done
Yeah.
both, and I actually
Yep.
hauled my small ITX case to a AIA, a national conference, to
Hmm.
showcase VR. That was not fun. I got checked multiple times in the security.
Yep.
Stopped.
I've
It
done
was
the
not fun.
same thing.
Yep.
It's I think here's the thing with VR is they're all still going to be a little bit clunky for a while until the technology gets much, much smaller. They're going to be clunky, but there's so much fun. Like outside of architecture, um, it's a dumb game, but I love it so much because it reminds me of being at the arcade as a kid at the movie theater, the old Terminator 2 shooter or the Resident Evil shooter. Playing games like Robo Recall. Um, I have so much fun doing that. And then people who have never done VR, my dad, I put him into Robo Recall for the first time. I don't think I've ever seen a grown man giggle like that before. And it's just so funny seeing a first timer go into VR and truly experience something uh, visually uh, different than what they would have otherwise experienced. So there are some amazing things about it, but early on there were a lot of really bad experiences that'll make you sick. The early dev kits were rough.
Yeah.
Um,
Because
Low
of the
resolution,
fidelity, low
low frame
resolution,
rate. Yep.
low refresh rate did contribute
Oh
to
man,
nausea quite a lot. So, do you have a really terrifying experience with nausea at all? Either
I
seeing
get
somebody or you having something.
I've never had it too bad. I mean, I've gotten the moments. Honestly, there was a point where I was in VR for the better part of 2 or 3 hours at one point modeling something. And when I came out, I had more um, uh, sort of nausea than being in it. I think it was just the sudden shock of a different experience. From going from that VR experience to real life, it was just like my eyes couldn't adjust effectively. But I've never had too much, even though I get very seasick very easily. I don't get motion sick, but I get seasick. So I don't know. My experience has been different than most. Most of the people that I've met have not gotten too seasick. It's usually first timers who have never experienced anything quite like that immediately react negatively. In demos, I've seen a lot of people have issues. Do you remember there's the plank experience where you walk the plank where you
I
go
mean,
up the
it's
elevator?
you're playing
It's
with the fear already, so the
You
setup is
are.
already, yeah.
Exactly, but I had people who were feeling uncomfortable or queasy in the elevator part of that sequence. That took the headset off like within 30 seconds of being in it and being like, nope. But that was early on in the dev kits where it was the early dev kit Vive and the Oculus headset. I mean, this is going back to 2014, I think. That those things were they were a little rough.
I mean, something that I advise is like if you're trying VR for the very first time, I advise not playing ever of those plank or like roller coaster or any high motion stuff.
Hmm.
Just start off easy. Do the whole tutorial thing where it kind of ease you off. And when you're using VR, like looking at your models and stuff, try avoid using any sort of ghost or floating around or hovering over spaces.
I'll
Always
tell you,
teleport.
I don't know who the creator was, but one of the most impressive and calming VR experiences I've ever seen was by an artist who I wish I could remember their name, but I remember Chris Nichols, who works for Chaos Group. I think he still works for Chaos Group. He sat me down and a few of the other artists and put us in a VR headset, and we're like, check this out. This is awesome. It was a mixture of sound design and 3D design, where it was almost like paint blobs floating in 3D space around you. And it wasn't so much the experience was anything dramatic or anything like that. It was just beautiful. And that coupled with the sound design really made all the difference in the world. Like it was
I've
a great
tested something.
experience.
It wasn't a room scale. It was actually Google Cardboard thing that you just plop your phone into and then just
Hmm.
see it. I forget. I think it's like the one of the beginning screens of the Google Cardboard experience, but there's like a fox, there's a whale, and there's birds flying by, and it's all kind of a little bit pixelated.
I think I remember
It's
that.
it's like faceted geometry, but there's a sound, there's a wave, there's wind, and as you said, it was more beautiful. It's a design. So you are still in a like a different environment, so you don't get fully immersed in, but there's
Yeah.
experiencing still the space. It is a stereoscopic experience, so you can feel the
S-
distance and the movement and the sound.
Yeah.
It was beautiful. I liked it.
Yeah. So going back to video games specifically, because I think there's a lot that you can kind of learn from a video game for design of spaces and interacting with spaces. There's a game called Lucky's Tale on Oculus that I really enjoyed a lot. It
Lucky's
kind of reminded me of like a Spyro the Dragon or Mario or something like that. It was a family game. It was very nice, but it was a side scroller that was also a 3D game in VR. And you play as sort of the omniscient third person perspective where you're kind of God view and you're controlling the character with a regular Xbox controller. That was a really interesting experience because it created new avenues for gameplay because you could look around the objects that you were eventually going to go explore. I think that it kind of speaks to design language in architecture because you're one of the things you don't really think about when you are designing in 2D or even 3D is how that path is experienced.
Mm-hmm.
And VR gives you that experiential point of view, and it also forces you to think about all facets of the design, not just like elevation and plan, because I think that's where traditional architecture fails a lot of the layperson, because as a layperson, you experience the world as a 3D space. When you're drawing that 3D space in 2D, you no longer experience it that way.
Right.
You know, so it's really kind of interesting bridging the gap between 2D, 3D designer and almost a 4D designer, where you're designing the spaces in flat 2D and then trying to communicate that in 3D. It's a weird kind of thing. It forces you to think a little bit more about what you're doing. Um, so yeah, I'm getting off on a tangent here, but
No, we.
um,
Yeah, I think. These are all bound to happen, anyways. We were just kind of taking our stab at it. So actually, on Oculus Quest 2, so I eventually moved up to Oculus, the original one, and I never moved up since then because I felt like Oculus Quest 2 is the fidelity is upgraded, but
excuse me.
I also felt that there was a lot of complaints about the head strap design. That was another thing. And isn't there a upgrade to the headset strap band where it allows you a single knob adjustment? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I like that one a lot. I haven't gotten to use it on mine yet. A friend of mine's got one. I kind of like the fact that I think they pack the battery into that as well. So you get an additional battery, because that thing's battery is terrible. This dies so fast, even when it's plugged in.
Oh,
Drives me nuts. I hate it. Like I think it's got like a 300 milliamp battery in it. It's so bad. Um,
I usually do like 2 hours and it's done, and usually about then everyone's tired of using it, so
yeah,
it's okay.
I can get about a solid hour out of this. Even plugged in, it drains it pretty quick. So,
Hmm.
and that's frustrating. You should get more out of it than that.
I
So,
really, I really like the black. I don't know how professional white is when it comes to professional gear. I know
I don't
they
know.
make a
My whole studio is
business.
white, so I like this.
I mean, it is what it is, but I also know that Oculus makes a business model. So it
There's no
actually,
difference.
yeah, but physically there's no difference. It
Yeah,
just
yep.
allows you to have without Facebook account apparently.
hmm Um, which
Eh,
is annoying. You're
yeah.
paying a premium for the same thing that's right there. Uh, it's it's Facebook, man. What are you gonna do? They own everything these days.
Well, the reason why I really liked original Oculus was when I purchased it, the Quest Link was just starting. So this was first released as a completely independent headset, not
hmm
the one that you connect to your computer at all. But I
Yep.
pulled the trigger when I heard that that thing is in beta, and actually it is to come and very soon. And I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna buy it and test it out. And I tested it out, it just works. The link was something really cool. And when I was testing it out, um, I was like, guys, this is the headset to get because you can have a completely independent experience as well as connecting to your computer, just like a regular Oculus Rift, which was fantastic. Which meant that all you need to
So
get is a USB 3 cable and it
yeah,
just
this guy
works.
right here, right?
Uh,
So
it could be any during the beta it could be any sort of USB 3 high rated high bandwidth cable, and I still use that cable till this day.
I've
And at
had
the
mixed results with mine.
they came out with their own link cable, which is fiber optics, which is great, but it was $70 a piece, and it was really hard to get at that time. And since then, they have done a couple of changes inside of the software, allowing different type of cables in different ways, and I think they just like fine-tuned it so many times it put off a lot of people. At one
Yeah.
point, it allowed regular USB 2.0 bandwidth cable possible, and I think it still is, but now they also go through a sort of a testing phase where it tests out the bandwidth of the cable, deciding whether this cable is going to work or not, rather than just pushing it through. So some cables work and some cables don't. It
Yeah.
mixes it
I'm a
in.
little frustrated. I bought mine as a kit just on Amazon because I couldn't get it at Micro Center. They sent it with an Oculus Link cable. In reality, it was a USB-C to USB 3.1.
Oh.
Um, and it doesn't work at all. It doesn't recognize it. It doesn't, and so I paid an extra few bucks for that thing, and that doesn't work. So not a big deal. I use it to charge my headphones.
I have
Not the end of the
bought
world,
like
but
three different long cables, like 15 feet, 10 feet. And because my room's really small, I don't want to have 10 feet. 8 feet is fine. So, like, I bought various length.
hmm
And I first purchased like 6 feet cable from Anchor, which was one that I think during the beta phase, Oculus officially recommended that cable because of its high bandwidth and reliability. And whenever all other cables fail because of either firmware updates or them limiting in a weird way, I always go back to this cable and it always works.
that's
So,
great.
so it is short, but it works. So that's always my base point, and I can try different cables from then on, and then it usually works. So that's one thing. But then, so I at that time I considered, you know what? I bought a completely independent headset, but now I can also use it as a full-on PC VR type of experience, which is great. I bought that experience at the same time. Now, later on, they introduce hand tracking. So that's, again, a complete
Oh, I didn't know they
bonus on.
introduced that.
Yeah, so hand tracking works on here too. So hand tracking wasn't even in development when I first purchased it. So when I was using it, and then I heard news about hand tracking possibly coming on board, and I didn't have to purchase anything extra. It just works, and it just started working. So just like if you had bought this headset for independent usage, then you've been just gifted of a PCVR
Huh.
experience and hand tracking. And then soon after, when hand tracking was in a beta, I found out a method to run this headset PCVR wirelessly, which is virtually right now the Quest. What is it? Airlink.
Yeah, I still can't get that working right.
So before Airlink days, before Quest officially had that, there was a virtual desktop. I think I mentioned it to you before.
hmm
Virtual desktop inside of which you need to sideload, and I actually made a video about it. So it works. So just like how USB 3.0 cable works as a Quest link, and then later when they release 2.0 capability, so you can take any USB cable that is 2.0, it will still work with sort of a more compression and less
Yep.
fidelity. So it worked. So it's been sort of upgraded in some way, and also hand tracking, and then even wireless PCVR experience with if you paid extra $20 for a
Yeah.
virtual desktop. And then now supposedly AirLink is a little bit finicky, but is something that's been introduced, and you can still sideload the AirLink and work in this one as well. So I don't
That's
know.
nice.
So this one's
So
been upgraded several times after you purchased the first
that's
thing.
nice. That's nice. That's really nice. So I was talking to somebody today about it because I actually went to pick this cable up this afternoon at Micro Center. God, I love having Micro Center right there. Um, and he was saying that one of the things that he's found worked best with the Oculus Link Air or Oculus Air Link, whatever it's called. He's like, if you have a router that supports it, uh, set up a what is it a Wi-Fi 6 um, uh,
Wi-Fi 5.0 or
connection.
5 gigahertz. Sorry.
No, 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 no. Wi-Fi 6 is something else. I don't remember whether it's 6 gigahertz or if it's just
No, it's called
a
Wi-Fi
variant.
6. It's a completely different thing, but
Yeah,
the requirement for wireless connection
is
is
5G.
5G. Yeah, or 5
Yeah,
gigahertz.
so
Yeah.
I've got 5G on my Wi-Fi router at the office, and that works pretty well. But he was saying that set up Wi-Fi 6 because
That is
Wi-Fi
faster.
6 and 5G are different, even though they're over the 5G network, right? Am I understanding that
I
right?
don't think it's 5G network. It's completely
What is
different
Wi-Fi
thing.
6?
It's either 2.4 or 5 gigahertz for regular Wi-Fi, and Wi-Fi 6 is a completely different technology. I don't know
It makes my
what
brain hurt.
I don't know
I
what
can't keep up.
frequency it plays at, but 2.4 gigahertz has limitation in terms of speed, but 5 gigahertz has limitation in terms of the distance and uh, the
So I
how
just
it
looked it up.
penetrates through the wall.
Wi-Fi 6 is capable of a maximum of throughput speeds of 9.6 gigabits per second, compared to 3.5 gigabits per second on Wi-Fi 5 and 600 megabits per second on Wi-Fi 4. Now, I don't know how that relates to what Wi-Fi 6 is versus 5G. I think 5G is just what Wi-Fi 6 transmits over. Um, but I don't fully understand it.
Even before Wi-Fi 6, there are Wi-Fi system where it combines 2.4 and 5 gigahertz because of their own limitations. So it mixes it until the device finds it, then it just pushes as much as it can with a mixture of two. So I would think Wi-Fi 6 is combination of two. But either way, it offers you a better experience, and I would expect the headset to actually behave better. I don't know if this one. I don't think this one has Wi-Fi 6, so I don't know if Oculus 2, Quest 2 has Wi-Fi 6 built in. I wouldn't think so, even though your router might.
Let's ask Google.
Wi-Fi 6 does operate in 2.4 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz bands,
Okay. All
and
right.
6 gigahertz band.
All right. So, well, that's cool.
So it's a new frequency.
So now I just need a Wi-Fi 6 wireless router. Just
No, but
spend my
your
money.
Oculus Quest, I don't think it is Wi-Fi 6. Oculus.
No, I just looked it up. It says it supports it.
Oh, okay.
So, yes, the Oculus Quest 2 supports both Wi-Fi 6, 802.11ay 60 gigahertz wireless standard. I don't know what a lot of this means, by the way.
I know
I am in no way, shape, or
802.11ay.
form. I am in no way, shape, or form a pro at this. I just like tinkering with it. So,
Me too. I'm no network expert. I struggle with it too, but I just know a few things, and I know Wi-Fi 6 is a really good thing. Hopefully, AirLink will iron out too. Obviously, it is at
hmm
its infancy, but I'm hopeful, despite the fact that it is Facebook. Oculus has been very good because they upgraded my kit here
they're nice to
multiple
you.
times. They were very nice to me, and I'm still playing with the hand tracking. I was when that first came out, I was like, imagine like you don't even have to deal with the controllers inside of your VR experience for AEC. Let's
So, with
say,
all that said, what do you think the future holds?
well, you see, that's what I'm hoping for. Like hand tracking. Your first time in VR, or maybe you are not as used to in VR experience, and let's say like something like Enscape. Like you turn on the it's so easy to render up, right? So you just press
Mm-hmm.
a button and then it just connects to your headset because it's wirelessly connected. And then you don't even need the controllers. You're just saying, phew, and then you just jump to that spot. And then you're just doing this to
All gesture based.
right. And that is all more intuitive, just like how kids start using iPads. It's just
Mm-hmm.
so intuitive and natural. And fiddling with, hey, there is a trigger button right here. There's another button right here. If you press, none of that. If you just do the gesture, then you start moving. And when the what is it called? Microsoft, not Microsoft, Trimble. What's that AR headset?
I don't know.
The
Are you
AR
talking about
headset. Um,
are you talking about the Windows mixed reality headset?
Not mixed reality.
Or AR whatever it is? Because there's a handful of them. I mean, there's
HoloLens. Sorry, it just
all right.
flew out of
Yeah,
my head.
Microsoft HoloLens. Yep.
HoloLens when it was on. I don't know if it still is, but it is all gesture based. But like,
Yeah.
click, like, yeah, like it was very clunky. Like you had to click several times to make it work.
Yeah.
It was very clunky. So, and right now this headset does so much better than that. Just a hand gesture.
Yeah.
You do this and then like all sorts of
Well, I
different
mean,
stuff.
and I was really excited about what was the one that was kind of a big flop?
The wizardry thing, like
Yeah, it was oh man, why am I blanking so hard on this?
flop where?
It was a big AR flop.
HoloLens is not a flop?
Uh, I wouldn't call it a flop. That was just an experiment.
No, HoloLens
What
too.
was the name? What was the name? AR headsets. Magic Leap. There we go.
Oh yeah.
That was a big flop.
Oh yeah,
That was
that
a
was
really
too.
big flop. So
So big that I don't
Magic
even
Leap,
remember.
I will say Magic Leap is had some really nice hand tracking stuff.
I
I
never
I
tried
got a
it, so I
chance to
don't
play
know.
with one at a
You're lucky.
conference a
You're
while
very
back.
lucky.
You're not missing anything. What they promised and what they produced was oof, that was a big difference. Um, but it was one of those things where it had so much potential, but I think they were just they couldn't close the deal because the technology is just not there yet. Without
Hmm.
spending $5,000, $10,000 on each unit, they couldn't make it work. Um,
But
which sucks.
I
But
think we're not far from it. And I think in the infancy
another five
of
years.
I would say so. Before the days of like smartphone, when first original iPhone came out, before that, there were phones that are combined with camera, like or
Hmm.
literally cameras like slapped on top of
I
regular.
still miss my Nokia brick.
Right, so a phone with a little bit of camera, phone with MP3 player, phone that has a radio, phone that had walkie-talkie, like
Hmm.
all sorts of mixture of things, but there wasn't like the one. But when iPhone came out, that was the beginning, very beginning of smartphones, and since then, the whole industry has changed.
Yep.
And there is, a lot of these jabs at it. And I think this is very successful in terms of VR.
Yeah.
The price point is just right. It's
Yep.
so easily approachable. I
I'm
think,
really curious. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, I think there's gonna be. I wouldn't mind if this was a bit more expensive and also offered a better professional experience for AEC world where people are using it for not just the entertainment purposes, but more for professional usage as well. So
Hmm.
Windows Mixed Reality kind of did that. They actually aimed professional environment and also the consumer environment. I think they did fantastic job in terms of lower tier, lower fidelity, but much better price point. This price point is killer. And The amount of experience that you get out of 299 US dollars is fantastic. And I think
Yeah.
if you up it to, let's say, five, six, or even $700 and much better experience, I think professionals are gonna go for it.
Oh yeah,
And
absolutely.
I think that's where the future is. If I know HTC just came out with the headset, I don't think it is going to take off as much as they used to with the Vive, just because they've lost so much market on this. But we'll see. I
Yeah.
think company will have competitions and
I
they're gonna
think
come up with good solutions
I'm
eventually.
curious to see what Apple does because I know they're working on their headset. In theory, we may never see it. But if they do come out with a wearable headset, what does that do to the Oculus Rift? Because I I'm not a big Apple fanboy. I used to be. I loved Apple products as a kid. The Think Different marketing got me as a little kid, and it held on to me till I hit college, and I was like, oh, this doesn't work for anything. I need a new computer.
It hit
Um,
me in college year, and then actually, as soon
yep.
as I got out of college, I actually graduated. But go ahead.
Yeah, so it was one of those things where I Apple does such a good job of developing a market out of a piece of hardware. I think they'll be able to kind of build off of that success with the iPhone. I mean, everybody I know has an Apple Watch. I don't know a single person who has a Samsung watch at this point. Um, Maybe a Fossil smartwatch, but that's about it. It's either Apple Watch or nothing. Everybody's got an iPhone. There are obviously people who have Samsung phones or Android based phones, which is great. I like those too. But Apple has the ability to steer the market in a direction that you otherwise might not be able to as another company. So I think when they get on board with VR, whether it's a great VR product or not, it will dictate where the market goes for virtual reality as a
For
whole.
any market, really. So your future projection is Apple, perhaps.
Yeah, I think once Apple actually releases a VR product, VR will be there. Because Apple, like there were a bunch of smartwatches before the Apple smartwatch, but once Apple released the Apple smartwatch, none of the other smartwatches really mattered. Um, the iPhone was another example. There were a lot of phones out there, and they all were somewhat smartphones. I mean, the Sidekick was a perfect example of a traditional smartphone. The BlackBerry was a perfect example of a traditional smartphone, and then Apple entered the smartphone market, and nothing else mattered.
Just completely wiped.
Yeah, it just reset the market, and I think you'll see a big difference when they enter the VR market or potentially the AR market if that's the direction they go. But either way, when Apple enters the market, it'll kind of solidify VR as a thing, and people are actually wanting to use it.
Yeah.
So, augmented reality is such a weird thing right now. No one really knows how it should work. Um, I think the direction there is going to be like some sort of smart glasses. But until you can go from augmented reality to fully immersive in the flick of a button, I don't know. I think it's going to be a gimmick for a few years at
I
least.
think this one's gonna come in more augmented reality. So I don't think augmented reality going further. I think it's gonna be the virtual reality that introduces augmented reality in it, because right now, you double tap on the side of the headset and then it shows the camera and I can see what's going on around me. And if some things were just mapped on top of that, I would accept that as a augmented reality. And I think that will work out just fine for me. And I can see huge benefits in that. Just using the phone and calling it like augmented reality, it's
It's dumb.
I
It's
don't,
dumb.
yeah. I don't think that's something that we want to experience. So that has still a long way to come. But I think VR it has come a very, very far, and I think there's huge potential.
It's here and it's truly here to stay versus like I don't know if you remember the 90s VR experiences. The
Yeah,
giant like running things. We had one at the local like
arcade center.
community. No, not in the arcade. It was too expensive for the arcade. They had it at the like interactive museum.
Oh
It was
wow.
called Discovery Center, Fort Lauderdale.
Oh wow.
Um, and I remember using it there and thinking it was the coolest thing in the world. And I think back to it now and I'm like, wow, that thing was terrible.
You can do the same right here with a headset that's 299.
Yep, and
Well,
so much more.
I have one final question here on the chat. Actually, Don has asked this question. I kind of answered it in a very crude way. So his question was, "Thanks for the discussion, Joseph and Ted. Question: Do you have the tips for modeling, setting textures, or setting lighting when preparing a model specifically for the best VR experience?" And my answer to that was to keep it slim as possible. Just because you are already introducing a lot of strain on your machine for VR experience. Because something to keep in mind, you're rendering for this case, it's I think 1440p screen on one side and another one, and then it is now calculating whatever that you are showing on your screen. If you're
Hmm.
using a presentation screen, then that one too. So your computer is thinking about four different high fidelity and high refresh rate screens. So if you can kind of lower the amount of things that your computer needs to do, then that it would be the best way to go about it. Is my
I mean,
answer.
absolutely. Simplicity and uh, so here's the thing. You can approach this from a few different ways. Because it's kind of a loaded question. It kind of
It
depends
is.
on what software you're using, how you plan on using the VR experience. Is it design work? Is it traditional like VFX VR workflow? Because you can light bake an entire room and save it out as a decimated model that looks great. But are you going to be designing in that? No. That
No.
is a one-time experience, and it only works in the way that it works. But in a design setting, yeah, keep the textures simple, keep the experience simple, uh, or if you want all that stuff, get some really beefy hardware.
And be ready to carry that around if need be.
Oh, I no, have the client come to you.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Or at least
So,
prepare some good amount of AC so that you can cool down the space.
yep. So I set up the headset today and I ran it in one of the scenes that I'm working in right now. It brought my Titan RTX to its knees.
Oh gosh.
It was brutal.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
So,
what VR does to your machine. So and something that I did want to mention on today's chat was that VR, it really is a rendering. So
mhm.
it has all to do with the way you render. So imagine you're trying to um, render a very high quality, high fidelity scene is basically what VR is. So, if you're trying to run that on your machine, then you got to be mindful of how
Yep.
much of texture and stuff that you're putting it in. There's nothing that you can really optimize for VR other than slimming it down.
Yep. Yeah. But yeah.
Well, I think that is it for today's discussion. Did you have anything that you wanted to talk about next week? Perhaps we can just kind of announce it if you have other things that you wanted to mention.
Nothing for next week. However, I'm going to be doing an Enscape webinar on July 15th. I'm going to plug that here.
Yes.
I will have more notes on that next week when we talk. But essentially, we'll be talking about um, how to use some of the third-party tools to get a little bit more fidelity out of your Enscape renderings and bringing your exteriors from kind of standard quality using Enscape assets to higher fidelity using third-party assets and tools. So that's kind of what we're going to be discussing. So that's my shameless plug for that, and
Well, we don't want to
then
give it away just yet.
I'll have more info next week.
Yeah, and also, be sure to leave a link to sign up for your webinar. Once the
Yep.
link becomes available, I'll be interested in seeing it and also hearing what you have to say. Maybe like in the coming weeks, we just look at maybe we watch your webinar together and
Oh
then
God.
just
Oh,
do a go over. Why did you say this, Ted?
just complete cringe. I'll never go back and rewatch it.
No, I never do. I
If
can't.
whenever I start my own channel, I'm just gonna post videos and never watch any of them.
Well, that's pretty much what I what I do. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna slowly devolve into that crazy guy, ranting into his TV.
Well, more importantly, are you available next week?
I believe I am.
All right. Well, if
Same bad
nothing,
time, same bad place.
well, Linus there. Yeah, so okay then I'll see you next week if nothing happens, but otherwise I'll be here, and if anyone wants to tune in, I'll be happy to chat and also do the same sort of talk next week. So I think I'm gonna wrap it up here. If you found this content enjoyable and somewhat learning, then please like this video and subscribe to my channel to continue watching these type of videos every week on Tuesday, kind of streaming either by myself, often with Ted. So thank you so much for tuning in, and Ted, it's always a pleasure to have you here, and perhaps I'll see you next week. And
Always a pleasure to be here.
yep, running the outro. All right.